Shalom and welcome to this week's Living Torah as we continue through the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy. A couple of programming notes. Number one, thank you for those who have, I just got a note yesterday in the mail from someone that says, I don't really understand podcasts that much, but whatever it is, I'm praying for it. So Dorothy, thank you so much for that. It is stretching my brain cells a little bit and also my patience because there's things totally out of my control. When you submit something to Apple, or Spotify or Google and all these things, it's like, handing over the controls to somebody else, which, as my wife could tell you, I don't do that real well. So it's moving in the right direction. We have already a couple of programs that have been recorded that are on the computer waiting to be uploaded. So that's Bezrat Hashem, God willing, coming very, very soon. September 10th and 11th, I will be, Bezrat Hashem, God willing, I will be joining Barry Phillips and House of David as they will be celebrating 20 years of the existence of House of David, 20 years after Barry kind of walked away from everything of life. He was a Church of God pastor. Many of you know that. He has great programming that he does, numerous things that Barry is involved in, House of David is involved in, of course. One of them is the 10-minute Torah, which is 5 times a week that you can go and actually it's not like Eddie Chumney's 5-minute update. I don't know if Eddie does that anymore. I haven't listened for a while, but it used to take me about 45 minutes to an hour to listen to that. Well, Barry is a 10-minute Torah, and sometimes it takes 10 minutes and 20 seconds, but he's pretty good about that. So if you have not subscribed to that, you can on his YouTube channel. And the other thing is, right now we're there's about 25 of us, I think it is, that are getting really excited because it's about 60 days from going to Israel. Just looking at something popped up on Facebook of memories, and it was the Makeni Yehuda market, pictures I had taken 3 years ago. We were in Israel at this time. I was in Israel at this time. I don't know how I was there during this time of year, but I guess I was, because would Facebook ever lie? Maybe I need to check that. All right, let's get into Devarim, Deuteronomy, again, chapter 16, verse 18, through chapter 21, verse 9. Guys, it's not that many more pages, and we're going to be right there in the midst of the fall festivals. We're going to be at Sukkot, and then, of course, right after that, we have an Israel trip planned. But this talks about. It starts out the word here, Judges, that titles the Torah portion. You are to appoint judges and officers for all your gates in the cities. Yudhe Vavhe, your Elohim is giving you. So this is, there would be different gates to the cities. As we look to the city of Jerusalem, we see that there are different gates. You have the Dung Gate and the New Gate and the Jaffa Gate and the Damascus Gate and all of these gates. The Eastern Gate, okay, that has been closed off for hundreds of years now. So all of these gates that are surrounding the city, that is the entrance to the city. Yeshua talked about that if someone tries to come in a different way to a sheepfold, okay, that they are to be thought of as a thief or a robber. We can look at the tabernacle, the Mishkan in the wilderness, that had one gate leading in. So if someone tried to enter in by, climbing under the curtain at some point around that rectangular curtain, then they were thought to be a thief, a robber, someone that is there for something other than a righteous act. And so they were not to be allowed in. The judges, the officers, were to be seated at those gates and to literally be the protection of the city. that nothing of unrighteousness would enter in. Wow, that takes us to so many different places right now of our homes. Do we have, and I guess we could look at the mezuzah. We fix a mezuzah at the doorposts and the gates of our houses. And what is that? It's more than just a little piece of decoration for the UPS guy or the FedEx guy to, once in a while look at it and go, and what was that thing again? And are you Jewish? And I don't understand. And you say, well, I don't know what it is. It's just something that the Bible tells me to do. That's not the appropriate answer. Okay, if that's all you know about a mezuzah, then well, maybe you need to study it a little bit more. And by the way, I have a teaching on my website, jointohashem.org, that does exactly that. How's that for a commercial break? So we put that mezuzah on the door as a standard. That's the standard of righteousness. And so the judges and officers that are stationed at these gates of the city are to be the standard of righteousness for the city, that nothing is allowed to come over that threshold. That is the same thing as the mezuzah. That is the same principle that we will see later on, I'll get into, regarding our own homes. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the scripture that says, do not bring anything that's detestable into your homes. How serious are you about the threshold of your house? About something that somebody brings into your house? About what you bring into your house? We should be serious about the threshold. There is a teaching regarding the threshold covenant. I remember living in St. John's, Arizona, and we were in a Mormon community, okay? And we had a house on a street that we were the only non-Mormons, so we were those people that live in that house, which was really fun when I put up a 6-foot-tall Hanukkah for Hanukkah, on the front porch. That got their attention. But our house was not built by a Mormon, but it was built to Mormon specifications. And that was that it was a room that was separate. There was a kind of an entrance room before you entered the rest of the house. Because it was about the concept of a person who was a non-Mormon was only allowed to a certain point in the house. Now, this is not strict. Was not strict in our community, but in the strict, my understanding of this, it was the strictest of Mormonism would not allow a non-Mormon to come into their house past a certain point. Should we kind of be the same in not allowing some things? Someone is allowed to visit, but there's a place that they're not accepted into the house unless they're living by a standard of righteousness, which is revealed to us in the Torah. Okay, I hope that made some sense. And, in the end, my statement is this: be serious about your threshold. Okay? That's the main thing. This whole concept of righteousness, and in Complete Jewish Bible, in David Stern translates it, justice, only justice you must pursue. The word is zadik. The root word here is zadik. So we are to pursue. Noah was called a zadik. Okay, there's many people we would translate that word into English as saints, which I really don't think does the word justice here. No pun intended regarding the scripture there. But we are to pursue a lifestyle of a zadik at all times. We are to pursue that which is of righteousness. Okay. Now, I want to go over to maybe an obscure place with this word, but I think one that is very appropriate to us. It brings forth a lot of meaning as far as what I see, and that is in the book of Hosea. Now, Hosea, for those of us that have been grafted in, adopted, the foreigner has joined themselves to Hashem, those that would refer to ourselves possibly as Ephraim, the book of Hosea should be something that is we come back to over and over and over again. This is like a personal, Hosea is like a personal letter to those of us who are grafted in, adopted in, etc., etc. So if there's a book of prophecy that's written specific, this is the one. So it may be a good opportunity here, with that being said, to go back. It's not a long book, okay, 13, 14 chapters I think it is. It's not a long book, but there's so much in this book. Actually, it's 12. Excuse me, 13. Yeah, I was right in the first place, 13. There's so much in here. And I want to go to Hosea chapter 10 and verse, where am I at here now? In verse 12, it says, if you sow Zadik for yourself. So this is about planting and sowing, about reaping, harvesting of fruit. If we sow righteousness, Zadik, a righteous lifestyle, what do we expect to be the fruit? What plant are you expecting to come out of the ground? If you put corn into the ground, you're expecting to get corn. You know, it's if you planted corn and all of a sudden you've got tomatoes, you might want to go back and look at that seed again, and you know, somebody might have lied to you on the picture on the front of that seed packet. What we sow, we're going to reap. That's a spiritual principle that was laid out in the first days of creation. It says, if you sow righteousness for yourself, you will reap according to grace, the unmerited favor. So what we reap, or what we sow, because of his grace upon us, we're going to reap that same thing. It says, break up the unused ground, or King James says the fallowed ground for yourselves, because it is time to seek Yudhe till he comes and rains down righteousness upon you. Wow, there's so much here. What happens when this fallow ground, those of us that have raised a garden, maybe you have a hobby farm or something like that, we've lived in some ridiculous places to try to garden at. I grew up in Florida, spent some time there, and it was, you kind of threw it out there into the yard and expected it to come out of the ground, and that was about it. We lived in Arizona, where there was caliche, which is this rock hard concrete-like substance. We lived in Oklahoma, where there is the Dust Bowl. We had the clay, that kind of a grayish clay. Now I'm in North Carolina. The difference between North Carolina and Oklahoma is the color of the clay. We have the red clay, so it stains everything. What is in common with all three of those soils, I'm thinking about Alaska, that was even worse, is that in all the places, it seems like all the places we've lived, except for Florida, it was a nightmare to break up the soil. You didn't just go out there with a shovel. You had to go out there with a pick. You had to get you had to water it. Even to get a hole in the ground, you had to put water in order to break that fallow ground up. Here's the message to us, that in the planting of righteousness into our own lives, if we're planting righteousness, trying to plant righteous seeds into hard ground, what's going to happen? Well, Yeshua talked about that in the parables. So if you're reading the words of the Scripture, the words of the Torah, all of Scripture, and you're finding that the fruit is not coming forth, that you're just reading it, but you're having a hard time that you're not seeing the fruit come forth of the seeds of the word in your life, it may be that it's time to start asking that the Father would break up that hard ground. Maybe that ground has been hardened because of hurts in your life, because of unforgiveness. We're coming up on the end of a Shemitah year, okay? This is a time for the releasing of debts. I said to our congregation the other day regarding debts, if you have an outstanding debt with someone that you've loaned them $100, 6 years ago, and they haven't paid you back yet, what's the chances they're going to? So you might as well just go ahead and say, I'm just going to wipe that clean. And that also happens with things that have been done against us, okay? It's time to wipe the slate clean, move on. If someone has hurt you somewhere in your life and they haven't come back and apologized and tried to make it right, and it's been 15 years ago or 7 years ago, what's the chances they're going to do that today? So go ahead and wipe the slate clean, okay? But here's the thing, that all of those things harden our soil so that the seed of the word can't get in. And he says it's time to break that up. Now, we can pray about this, great, wonderful, but consider that when you pray for that ground to be tilled, what happens if anybody that's ever gone out and tilled a piece of ground? What does tilling the ground reveal? It reveals stuff in the ground. It reveals rocks. I was helping Daniel, our son, not long ago, in putting in a mobile home, and they were out there trying to dig the footers for the pads and all those things, and on the surface, it was grass. It was nice green grass. It was beautiful. This land that had been there for many years without anybody touching it. And it just looked like, wow, this is the most fertile ground around here, until you took a shovel and went clink. And it was, the guys that were putting in the footer said, we have not found a place anywhere in this area that has this many rocks. And they literally were out there with pickaxes trying to dig a hole 6 inches to put a concrete base in. It was crazy. So the breaking of the ground is about, there's going to be things that are revealed. So when you pray that prayer of, Father, would you help me, and let's break up this fallow ground that I have, because I desire the fruit more than I desire where I'm at. Okay, you have to get your eyes on the fruit in order to go through the pain, because the fallow ground that's a difficult time. So get your eyes on the fruit, which is going to be the righteousness, the sowing of the seeds of righteousness. And then he says this, back to Hosea chapter 10, and because it is time to seek Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh till he comes and rains down righteousness upon you. So this is kind of a fascinating picture here, that we have this hardened ground, and we're wanting to sow seeds of Zadik into it, but it has to be broken up. But when it's broken up, then the seed of Zadik is going to be sown, and then the heavens are going to respond with the Zadik of the spiritual realm. Oh, this is getting good, right? So the seed of righteousness in the natural realm that we're sowing into that broken up ground is now going to be watered with the righteousness of the heavens. Now, I've lived in, as I said, various places, and you can take city water, okay, and put it on a garden or a lawn or whatever, and it will just kind of sit there and laugh at you. It's like there's chemicals, there's chlorine. This is, what do you put in? What do you use bleach for? To kill things. Think about it. Use bleach to kill things. So what do they put in the water? Chlorine. So if you have city water, you have dead water. There's no nutritional value. It's just a dead liquid. So you'd have to start to water. That's the only thing we had. Then we moved into a place that had a well, and that's great. Well water, at least it doesn't have all that stuff. I've got a well here in North Carolina. It's about 600 feet deep. Okay, there's not a whole lot of junk down there, I don't think. So you can put well water on something and it'll start to grow. But then you have the rain. The most amazing thing is when you have a thunderstorm that produces ozone, and literally it changes the molecular form of the water. It energizes it. And you take a garden that you've been putting city water on it, it's like, and then you put well water on it, it's okay. But then you put rainwater from a thunderstorm, and all of a sudden, this thing kind of comes out of the ground crazy. This is the same principle, okay? So we want to sow righteousness into ground that has the contaminants, the rocks, the debris, the stuff has been revealed, gotten rid of, and then we want that righteousness from the heavens. And when we have the Zadik seed of the natural realm and the Zadik water of the spiritual realm, what do we end up with? We end up with righteous fruit. Okay, went a long ways with that one. I'm not going to get through this Torah portion, am I? So, you are not to plant any sort of a tree as a sacred pole beside the altar of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. Your Elohim that you make for yourselves. And so this, and about a standing stone, the wording here is an Asherah pole. Okay, now, at the time of the temple, there were no trees on the Har HaBayit, the Temple Mount. Today, they have planted trees. They, as in the, I can't remember who planted the trees, or the Turks, or the Ottomans, or some occupying force. But one of the first things that will be done in the rebuilding of the temple for the third temple is that the trees on the Temple Mount will not be there. Oh, but I love trees. Yeah, I do too. I got a whole bunch of them right out my window here. I love creation. I don't use the word nature, but I love to be out in creation. I love to just watch, and right now the leaves are turning and it's going into fall. It's a beautiful time of the year. So why would he say to not put something of beauty on the Temple Mount next to the temple? Because of a conflict, because of a competing of the creation with the Creator. It's possible that you can start to gaze at creation and lose your focus on the Creator. Well, how could that possibly be? Well, read the book of Romans. They worshiped the creation more than the Creator. All you have to do is turn on the news these days to see a people who is worshiping the creation more than the Creator. This is not just the Wiccans or whoever that's going out, those up in Sedona that go put, their credit cards under a rock and pray over it, that it'll get paid off. I don't think that works, by the way. But, that's what happens when you trust the creation. And you start the creation starts competing with the Creator. Now, this word Asherah pole goes back to Babylon. We're all familiar with Asherah poles. All you have to do is drive around your community, and they're all over the place, on top of most churches. Yeah, that's the basis of the steeple. That's where it came from. Well, I don't see it as such. It's this thing pointing to the heavens. Well, it doesn't matter how we see it or not. Go back and research where the Asherah pole came from. I'm not. This is a family show, so I'm not going to go into it. But this has something to do with fertility. It's in many places in the South, specifically, where there's been a Masonic influence. There are Asherah poles in the center of the city. This is not something of righteousness. Those buildings, maybe that's going to be something. I remember a person that I know that went to somewhere, and they were speaking, and they said, we're going to go do a circumcision. And the guy was like, okay, well, that's fine. This is going to be kind of a new experience for me to, be invited to one. And they said, yeah, and you're going to do it. And they got a little nervous, of course. And he's like, I'd never done it. They said, oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Well, they had just bought a church building. They were going to be taking the steeple off of it. So that was their form of circumcision. I think the whole land of Israel, look at the Muslim minarets, okay? Same principle here, guys. So we're not to put anything before the Creator. We're not to have anything that competes with Him. And one of those is the Asherah pole. Moving on from there, I probably should have done that a long time ago. It says in chapter 17, you're not to sacrifice to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh your Elohim a cow or a sheep that has a defect or anything wrong with it. It is an abomination to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. I got to go back. I just use this every year. I know that many of you here have heard this numerous times, but this lady that you see over my this shoulder, which everything's backwards on the camera. Okay, so it's that shoulder, which is still my left shoulder, but it's actually it's that way. So yeah, I know, a mirror image here or not. Granny, one of my memories of Granny was tithing. This woman was, she was the bacon queen. She put pork in everything, including the dessert, the pie crust. Everything had lard in it. There was on her stove, there was a can, aluminum, I guess it was aluminum can, and that had bacon grease. That was bacon drippings, and that's how we say it in the South, drippings. And so she would pour the bacon drippings into that. And thinking about it now, it's amazing that we lived through that stuff. It was just on the stove, must have been rancid. And whatever was in the bottom, I have no idea. But she'd use it for whatever it was. So Granny was not really, she didn't know what the word kosher was, nor was she really thinking about living at that as far as the dietary laws. But when it came to her tithe, Granny was serious about that, and she never made much money. But she'd take me to Barnett Bank, and I'd go in, and because you got a lollipop in that day, and so I'd go in with Granny, and she'd deposit her little Social Security check, get out enough for the light bill, and whatever little bills she had to pay along the way. And she would ask for however much money that tithe was in brand new bills. She would never place a bill into the offering plate on Sunday that had been circulated before. And that was, that to me spoke, I cannot tell you the volumes that in days that I was not in any way living for God, that still spoke to me, that she was wanting to offer something that had no defect in it. So, when it came to the concept of tithing, I just never had a problem with it. I mean, I've heard people argue over this thing of should we, shouldn't we. I mean, I've heard every argument in the world. But folks, I was given a model of a woman who was serious about not just tithing, but not offering something that had any defect, nothing that had been used before, had touched other, bunch of human hands. She was serious about that. And, today I know that we use checks and PayPal and all kinds of different media to to give our this false currency that we have. It's not about the currency. Okay, when Granny went to the bank and she got that those bills, it wasn't about the bill itself. It was about the intent of what was inside of the woman, and that was that I don't want to offer anything in a flippant manner. Those of you that donate, whether it's to us or other people or different ministries that are out there, would you do something? And I believe we should be tithing. Okay, that's just a principle. I believe it should be. We should be tithing of our increase. But when you do that, if you're like going online and you're doing a PayPal or something like that, don't just treat it the same as you do your electric bill. Don't just treat it the same as you're sending in the money for your mortgage payment or your car payment. Take a moment before you hit the button and consider the reverence, the holiness, the kadosh of that, the weightiness of that part of your income that you're giving. I hope that means something to you there. It goes on and talks about that when you enter the land, you're going to start asking for a king. Why? Because other nations have kings, and we need to be like everybody else, which is not something that the word tells us. Okay. I was driving down the road with a friend of mine yesterday, and we were talking about something, and they asked me why I own the vehicle I do. I've got a 2011 Toyota FJ, and it's a very unique vehicle. I said, I just like being unique, and they looked at me and said, well, that's not news to me, or something. They said something like that. I just, it doesn't bother me being unique. I kind of, it's part of my personality. I kind of enjoy it. So when the scripture says we're to be a unique people, okay, I'm fine with that. But this whole concept is that Israel would always have this idea of wanting to be like everybody else. And that's not something we're supposed to do. But if you're going to have a king, the king, as it says in the rest of this chapter 17, he's to write a copy of the Torah in his own handwriting. So the king that you have must line up with and have and submit himself to the Torah, which is the righteousness, going back to the planting of the righteousness. Don't allow people at the entrance to the gate that are not Zadik. And don't put somebody in a king position in your life that's not a Zadik. Something that's always bothered me is people like Elvis or various. Well, he's the king. No, he's not. I serve one king, and that king was able to be resurrected from the dead because of his righteousness. Make sure that the king you're serving has power over death and the grave. So when someone says to something of this person's the king of that or the king of that word king is associated with one person and one person only in my life. Everybody else is just a mortal, even if they can sing good or shake their body or something like that. They're still not the king. There's only one king. Hope I made myself clear there. Chapter 18 is about ridding your house once again. We go down specifically to there must not be found. This is in verse 10. There must not be found among you anyone who makes his son or daughter pass through fire, a diviner, a soothsayer, enchanter, sorcerer, spellcaster, consulter of ghosts and spirits, or a necromancer. That's really dumb. That one is crazy. But there's a standard. Again, there's a standard for our house. We should take the threshold of our house very seriously. And so there's things that are not allowed to come over the threshold. And that's not just true it should not just be true in our physical house, but in our physical house. Okay? There's things that shouldn't be allowed. We have thresholds in our body. Our ears are thresholds. Our mouth is a threshold. Our eyes are a threshold or thresholds. Our nose that's all thresholds. Okay, so don't watch what you put up your nose. Yeah, I know. Watch what is brought in your mouth. That's why kosher, last Torah portion, kosher was the first thing talked about, because this is a threshold. So if you're not serious about the threshold, you're not going to be serious about a lot of other things. If you're not serious about what comes in through these eye thresholds, these ear thresholds, then what's going to happen? The house is going to break down. The house is going to be declared condemned, unrighteous, uninhabitable. And so we're told right here what to allow into our house and what not to allow. And things like fortune telling, horoscope. I sometimes will grab go to Ingles here, our local grocery store, and grab some thing of chicken, and they'll throw up on top there a fortune cookie. Guys, you can do what you want to, okay? I leave the fortune cookie behind. The lady, you forgot your fortune. No, you can have it. I don't want to know. Okay, I don't want to be influenced by things like that. I don't want to be influenced by horoscopes. About this is people go to all this kind of other stuff, tarot cards and all that stuff. Maybe the fortune cookie is the gateway. Okay, you're opening up things. What are you trying to do? When you open a fortune cookie, you may think, well, this is just kind of a nonsense. Yeah, it is nonsense to me, but it's a desire to see into the unknown. It's a desire to see into the future. I posted yesterday on Facebook my thought, trust your unknown future to a God that created it. So I don't need insights into tomorrow. Is that what Yeshua was talking about? Of not, take no thought for tomorrow? That doesn't mean don't plan for tomorrow, but don't be consumed with tomorrow. So when you open, the horoscope and you read it, what are you trying to do? What's the real seed of that? It's not just entertainment, folks. There is something attached to those things. Let's only allow righteousness, Zadik, over our thresholds. Now, the next verse I want to go here, and I'm probably going to camp out here for a little bit. In verse 13, you must be wholehearted with Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim. King Jimmy translates it, you are to be perfect before the Lord your God. I talked about this with the guys on the podcast last night. I want to go into some of the things that we discussed. If the standard is perfection, I'm out. Okay, I'm done. I'm through. If the standard of living for Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is perfection, there's only one that was perfect, and you're not looking at him. That's obvious to Anybody that's watching me today that's known me at all, especially my wife, but I'm not in line for perfection. I serve a king that is, and that's as close as I'm going to get, okay? So the word here is not perfection. Baruch Hashem. Thank God. The word is not perfection. Wholehearted is a pretty good word, but the word is tamim. A fascinating word that this tamim is it means complete or completed would be a good way of looking at that. So let's kind of take the word apart here for a moment. It begins with the word here is tav mim yod final mim. The root word of this is tav mim final mim. So just a little bit of addition there in getting to this word. The same basic principle, one of them is a root for the other one. Tav, we know that the Hebrew aleph bet, the aleph and the tav. Yeshua said, I'm the beginning, I am the end. I am the aleph and I am the tav. He could have said, I am the beginning and I am the completion. That would have been that would be a perfect way of translating what Yeshua was saying. So when he said, I did not come to abolish the Torah, but to complete the Torah, he said, I've come to bring forth to completion the message which is there, which is about a Redeemer. So Yeshua, in this word, it is, first of all, the tav, which is the letter of the covenant. So this is about the completion of the covenant. The mem, the first mem, is about water, and it's referred to many times as the chaos of water. And by the way, we go back to this word of tamim, and the first time it's used is in reference to Noah. So we can see the chaos of the waters that were in his time. Here in North Carolina, we have rapids, we have rivers that people come here from all over, and they whitewater raft and and kayaks and whatever else that they do. I watch them from a distance because I'm not into getting my head bonked on something. But it's this chaotic water that is going down river, and then it is a yod, which is the hand of the heavens, the hand of God. So this tamid is in the center of this is we're to see the hand of the Almighty. The hand of the Creator is in the midst of this whole thing. The last letter is the final mem, which is a closed water. Let's reference it kind of like this, of a lake. This water comes down a river. This rushing water is going over rocks, around curves. It's picking up things along the way. It's dropping off things along the way. It's going through turmoil, all kinds of things that are happening, the churning of that water, and then it's dropped out into this lake. And that same water that's been through all the chaos now is peaceful. I mean, is there anything, I love, one of my favorite drives is going from here over toward Chattanooga. There's a pass that you go, the river valley that we go through, the Hosea river that's there. And I mean, you see this concept of the rapids, and there's usually numerous people, especially on the weekend. You can't even find a parking place along the way. There's all these people that are on rafts, and there's businesses that have rafts and kayaks and everything else. And then you break out of there into this lake. And many times I've driven this just about daylight. I've gotten through there, and the sun is just coming up. And there's this beautiful lake that is glassy. There's mountains in the background. There's the stillness there, and I don't think there's anything more peaceful looking on this earth to me than a glassy lake. It's just mesmerizing. And this is the idea of Tamim, of complete. That in the working out of the covenant in our lives, he takes us through the chaotic times of life, his hand always being upon us to bring us to the completion and a place of tranquility, a place of peace, a place of shalom. See that you take a drop of water, one droplet of water, and you put it up at the top of that river, and it's going to go through all of those twists and turns. It's going to go over rocks. It's going to go through things. It's going to go around things. And eventually that drop of water, the molecules of that water are going to make it down to that lake. And it's all done by the hand of the Creator. Philippians chapter 1 verse 6 says this, one of the most fascinating verses to me, one of the most intriguing and meaningful, a verse that I consider over and over again in my own life. He who began a good work in you is able to complete it until the day of Yah. Philippians chapter 1, verse 6. He who began the drop, the seed at the top, is able to see it through to the tranquility of the end. He who began your life is able to see it through to the completion, which is the kingdom. The destination, when the seed came forth, the destination was secure. That the molecules of that water would make it from one end to the other. And those of us that are in covenant, we have chosen to enter into this covenant. He has placed his hand upon us to bring us through the chaos of life and into the place of peace, the place of his rest, the place of his kingdom. The book of 3 John, verse 2 says this, Beloved, I wish that you would prosper and be in health, just as your soul prospers. It's the same concept. That if we look at our lives, we go through trials, we go through troubles, we go through situations, we go through turmoil. Whatever we're going through, whatever you're going through today, and I know people are going through a lot of things, okay? It's just a fact of life. Always look to the spiritual aspect. If there's things that are chaotic, look for his hand. Look for the hand in the middle of the word Tamim. Look for his hand between the waters of chaos and the waters of shalom, the waters of peace. Well, I've got a few other things. One of them is 2 witnesses, spirit and truth, okay? So if you hear it, you got to see it. If you see it, you need to hear it. Let there be 2 witnesses, which is the heavenly realm and the natural realm coming together as one in our lives. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. Have a blessed, prosperous week. Bezrat Hashem, God willing. See you again next week. And until then, be strong.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.